Welcome into Red River North, right here at Total Coverage Sports. Randy Heitz, Dave Myrick, 1077 The Franchise. Pleased to be joined by our special guest tonight, Coach Chris Hayes. Look, if you want to know X's and O's in football, this is the dude you turn to. He's been looking at some Oklahoma, Alabama film this week. Big one coming up in Tuscaloosa. How are we doing tonight, everybody?
Can't complain at all. Appreciate you having me with you tonight.
I'm good, man. It's just another week rolling right along.
Yeah, that's right. Already week 10 college football season. I don't want to think about it and going by too fast. But let's dive right in, boys. We got a big one coming up, Tuscaloosa, a top 15 college football rankings matchup, a big one for Oklahoma. They roll in with two conference losses. A lot of people think that they can ill afford a third. Coach, you've looked at both teams. Kind of give me your thoughts overall on this matchup.
I think it's a really good key and lock game. A lot of times you probably have heard this concept of styles make fights, and I think there's something about Brent Venables' defense that really complements the offense of Alabama, and as highly and powerful that it is with Ty Simpson moving the football very well. OC Grubbs is doing a really good job with Bama since realistically after the FSU loss has just really showed a constant improvement week in and week out with a consistent trio of receivers. Obviously, getting Jam Miller back and having the opportunity to improve their running game, but I think they've improved their running game with their, the talent that they had there prior to Jam being hurt. But, the one thing I see from OU standpoint is obviously they see the game from last year as leverage to build on, not look at it as something to be the overwhelming factor, but they have something on Bama due to the fact that they've seen Kalen DeBoer, they've seen what he wants to do offensively, they've seen Grubbs' his work at hand. They've seen Coach Womack, who's highly pissed off right now as a defensive coordinator based off what Arbuckle did to him last year. So I think from a defensive Oklahoma side to the Alabama offensive side, right now there's some good things to be thinking about because I think it fits a good key and lock system for that game.
Coach, when you talk about Simpson and the way he's played, he's been phenomenal. Maybe best quarterback to second best quarterback behind Sand, all season long.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at that style and what has at least given Oklahoma success, do you feel like his style is what plays to Venables' advantage as opposed to what Chambliss did at Ole Miss being the full-fledged running quarterback?
I think it is, and I think that's the reason why I'm going to show you a similarity and why I feel like the Tennessee game that you just got out of there in Neyland Stadium has a lot of similarities because of like what Joey Aguilar is to what Ty Simpson is. Very tall, prolific, pro-style quarterback, likes to sit in the pocket, likes to sit on his spot, make his throws. I think Tennessee has two high prolific receivers, just like Alabama has basically a top two. I think Isaiah Horton is a good complement as their third receiver. But I think that's the thing about it with what I was mentioning a while ago about the styles make the fights. I think there's something about, and that's the reason why a lot of times if you've ever watched a ball game before and you're just wondering like, why do we always seem to struggle against this team or against this concept? And I think it has a lot to do with, like I call it, the lock and key system. I think Brent Venables' defense poses a problem for what Coach Grubbs wants to do offensively. And this year, it's a little bit, the only thing that makes this different this year is because of the fact that you take Jalen Milroe out of the equation. Now you've got a guy who can extend the play with his legs as a quarterback, but really doesn't want to. He wants to rely on the play action, a good ground game, and obviously to get the ball to his playmakers and Jeremy Bernard and Ryan Williams, obviously, and then Isaiah Horton as the third. But I still think for purposes of me being a defensive-minded coach, I've coached both sides of the football, but I started coaching defense first, so it hits home with me. Brent Venables I've been a fan of him ever since he was at Clemson, obviously. I liked what he did with a lot of kids that I actually coached that actually played for Clemson, so I enjoyed the fact of watching him coach his defense up through the years that they had those successful runs in the playoffs. So to answer your question, I think there's a very good matchup we're looking at from Oklahoma's defensive side of the ball, especially towards what Alabama's going to pose regardless of quarterbacks.
Let's keep on that side of the ball, Coach. Oklahoma's down four defensive front has been very good all season as far as disrupting, getting after quarterbacks. Alabama has allowed some sacks, I think 15 on the year, so well over one a game. Talk about the impact, of course, the front four for Oklahoma, that front seven getting after Ty Simpson will have on the back end. There's a lot of people OU fans are a little bit cautiously optimistic about the back end of their defense holding up against those Alabama wide receivers. Talk about how the two can help each other.
Theoretically, what you always want to see is that you get havoc from the front four. If you can get havoc from the front four, that allows you to do so many things with your guys behind that, the seven that are behind. I think you guys move very well pre-snap. I don't really think there's the one thing I like about what Brent does is I just love how sound he is when he brings his exotic blitzes. And, watching him against Tennessee, even watching him against Texas, I broke down about 5 different ball games. What I love is that what I see from them, whether they're bringing 4, 5, or 6-man pressure, they seem to always be sound on the back end of that as well. It's really complementary football that makes it work. I know you and I were talking about this the other day. The Mason Thomas kid up front, 32, I really like what he does, at different levels. I think, what did you tell me about Kobe McKenzie, by the way? I got to watch him and saw him against Texas, but obviously wasn't playing against Tennessee. I know you talked about him being injured. Is that correct?
Yeah, he's out with a groin injury. I think it's probably going to be a game time decision. We probably won't hear much one way or the other until Saturday.
Well, I do know this. I think Owen Heineke did a pretty good job of complimenting what he did behind that when I was watching game film. So, I mean, looking at the linebacker level, he's always got rangy guys that really move well laterally, and they're going to have to because I think Alabama's going to definitely get into some screen game stuff as well. They're going to make you move laterally as well. And, from the front four, I look at Mason Thomas, there's Thomas, Jackson, Williams, and Stone. I look at a lot of those guys that had some success there against Tennessee especially. And if he's causing havoc with those front four, which is what I've seen to be a common, a denominator when you have a program defensively doing well and having consistency and getting off the field on third down, you're not having to bring the 5th and 6th man. Simulate pressure, sure, bring it from different areas, but if you can get home with your front four, you're going to see success, and Venables has shown that, and something I'm looking forward to seeing him do as well on Saturday against Bama.
To be honest, I think Kobe is playing. He pretty much said that the Tuesday on the franchise that he's good to go. I think the one we have to watch and make sure gamesmanship that goes on this week, that's going to be Mason Thomas, who had the groin injury and that fumble return against Tennessee. That's what we're going to have to wait and see. And I want to, before we jump to the offense, just because there is that question looming out there, with Mason Thomas, and I know you've probably seen him a few games, especially Tennessee. What are your thoughts on the young man Taylor Wine and what he's been able to do basically in one game, replacing our Mason Thomas?
I think it's phenomenal what I've seen. The thing that I like about it that shows the depth that you want to see is growth. And, when I look at those people that have come in and, replaced, I went through a different sample size of plays. What I see is that you don't see a drop off. And that's something that's nice when you have a guy that can just plug right in and play. That's when you have youth, sometimes you're going to see growing pains that come from that. But what's nice is when you're able to put someone in an install, tweak a few things, but yet you don't see that drop off that you're hoping you won't see. That comes from trust at practice. That's obviously come from the trust he's built in the coaching staff to obviously give him playing time, because I know he's out there competing day in and day out. What I do like, and this is something I was telling Dave a while back, is that I've been very impressed with Oklahoma's ability to get off blocks one-on-one, which is something Georgia, who wants to maintain gap integrity, something I've been watching all year long that we don't seem to do as well. We have to bring that 5th and 6th man from the linebacker level, second level for blitzes to, for the quarterback sacks. But what I like to see from Oklahoma and what I've watched on film is the ability of one-on-ones at the first level, at the down level in the trench, getting off one-on-one blocks and getting to the quarterback. That's going to be essential for getting to Ty Simpson, because he's not necessarily as used to that as people having to bring that 5 and 6 man pressure. So doing a great job of replacing plug and play and not seeing that drop off. And I think they're doing a great job there.
Yeah, Coach, all great points. Yeah, I've got the injury report pulled up. Kobe McKenzie had the groin. They're calling our Mason Thomas a quad injury, which, boy, that's a big muscle in the human body. It takes a while to heal. He's going to be coming up on 2 weeks. But, I mean, the addition of Taylor Wine coming on in his stead, it's hard to say you don't lose a lot with Taylor Wine, because our Mason Thomas is so good. But I've been impressed with Wine. I mean, not just getting after the passer, but holding up the edge and run support as well. I mean, all around really good defensive end. But let's jump to the offensive side of the football. Last year, Oklahoma, against this same DC and Alabama defense, had really good success with the quarterback run game. I watched some Florida State. from Alabama earlier this year, Castellanos, the Seminole quarterback, a lot of the same. Quarterback run, gashed them pretty good. How do you see that battle in the trenches? Oklahoma's newly formed offensive line, John Mateer running the football, Xavier Robinson against that Bama D.
Well, I went back and watched the FSU game, and I watched what Gus Malzahn had against as offensive coordinator. I think that what Malzahn really wanted to do is that he had success hitting outside the tackle box. So the one thing that he definitely exploited as well is, Kane Womack is a cover one kind of guy. He likes to be in cover one a lot. So Gus Malzahn dialed up a lot of outside one-on-one plays, and that's one thing FSU did. They won those 50-50s. That was something that was important as well. A lot of cover three concepts to hit overs, which is the deep digs across the field where you run guys off one side of the hash and bring a guy across to replace where they're removing from. If you can catch them in those scenarios, Gus Malzahn dialed up a lot of that. He also did a lot of duality stuff. And this is something where I think when you look at Arbuckle and what he needs to do with Mateer is if you really want to keep Alabama off balance, you need to have plays what I call in duality, which means you put somebody on an island that you're reading and you actually run away from the strong safety because of where Hubbard is at in their strong safety system. He flies down a lot in a lot of buzz coverages. If you run away from his strong safety field, I think just watching like LSU this past week against Bama, watching what they've done against us, I say us, what they did against UGA in week 4 there as well. I noticed we had success hitting off the tackle box when we were running away from the strong safety because there are weaknesses there. So if Oklahoma looks at those kind of concepts and works on putting a guy where you can't make him right, he's the read guy where you're handing it on stretch sweep with 2-3 guys possibly blocking, or Mateer's following up in there with a guard pulling. You're always having one guy that's unblocked. And when you've got one guy that's unblocked, that means somebody else is being blocked by a double team somewhere. I think that's what you've got to do. And it's got to come down to the fact of being committed to the running game. If there's one downside that I've seen watching Oklahoma football, and I've watched all the SEC games, I didn't watch any of the group of 5. But what I've noticed is that it seems like y'all get away from the run game too early. And to me, that's going to be essential for y'all to match Alabama's physicality. And that's something y'all have got to be able, I say y'all as in Oklahoma fan base, understanding that Oklahoma needs to punch them in the mouth and equal that physicality that they're going to bring from the defensive side of the ball. And I began to see that in the Tennessee game. When John Mateer settled down, wasn't so busy in the pocket with his feet, all of a sudden they started getting into more what I call 12 personnel. I make a form of that called YAP, which means you have a tight end and an H-back that are both tight end type people that are connected on the line of scrimmage, and you got twins left, which could be, your guys that I really like from the receiver standpoint. If I'm sitting there thinking right now, why I'm at Sartania and number 4, Burke. I sit there and look at that twins game that you could play out wide, where you could play your fast game outside with screen. You could also get into rollout type stuff with those 2 receiver sets, bringing down motion and running play action out of that. But it all has to stem from us trying to establish the run game. And that comes off allowing Mateer to run the RPO game, to run the play action game out of it, and then also be in those duality plays as well. But what I saw success against Tennessee, especially later in the game, is Arbuckle started really relying on what's called duo scheme instead of zone scheme. It's kind of like running gap scheme where you don't have a puller. You got double teams that cause confusion at the linebacker level, and the running back just finds the sweet spot. And y'all really did a good job later in the game against Tennessee running it to that YAP side where you had the tight end and the H-back connected on a nub side, and you had the defensive end having to widen. They had a strong safety corner sitting there. And, of course, y'all did a really good job of busting a long run there later in the game with that young man that's at running back 24. Trying to think.
Robinson.
Yes.
Robinson, yeah.
Yes, I like that kid. I think that's something that, you can rely on as well. But it's got to come down to committing to the running game to make Bama come down in there, match that physicality with them. And I think that opens up a lot of things that Mateer and offensive staff want to do.
Hey, when you look at this, and let's kind of talk about Bama's defense. You broke down a lot of the matchups. And I know you say they're physical, but when you look at the numbers and what they've done this year, it's a really good defense, but this is not your prototypical Bama defense. And you bring up the run game. What is so different defensively for them that they've struggled? If there's one set that they've really struggled defensively, it's kind of stopping the run. What's kind of been the biggest difference for them with this team as opposed to maybe the last couple of years?
I think it's just the sound nature of what they want to do defensively. I think you've got so many teams now that are in the gun, and you typically have 6 in the box to gun all the time. And that's the reason why you see the fullback who's now become that H-back in 12 personnel, reading him like a fullback. And what happens is that you always away from typically the strong safety, or what most people would call the star, if you've got a 4 cover look over the top of that, is a weak side hole to the away from the strong safety. A lot of times you'll see a safety lined up 10 yards over a number 2 receiver. There's no outside apex defender away from that because of the 4-2-5 concepts, because so many teams are running the nickel now because they want to spread you out to run the football. You've got to defend it with 6. And Alabama just, to me, is just not in that same mindset. What I see differently from the Florida State game to when they played their last game against LSU, their pre-snap recognition is so much quicker. They're realizing what they have set up a lot quicker. I think they look sound. They're beginning to show play with all 11 lined up, knowing where they're going. They're communicating very well. But what I've noticed a lot watching all the games, they're tackling a lot better. They tackled horrifically against FSU. Yep. They wasn't moving to the football. I think there was too much thinking going on. And when you can't be fast and confused at the same time. And I think that's what we saw at the beginning of the year. But as they have progressed over the course of this year, I see them moving more fluidly. There's less looking around. Pre-snap, they're ready to go, and they're flying to the football. Sometimes you have to use that, to your advantage offensively. But I think that's the reason why we're seeing things that happen, because as Georgia fan, it was nice to see us also hit outside the tackle box as well. We ran over, you sit here and tell us that we win the time of possession and we have the you have over 200 yards of rushing offense and we still lose the ball game. I say you're crazy. Because that's the thing about it in the SEC today is, to me, the team that typically outrushes the other team is going to be the successful team. But it's going to come down to time of possession. You got to slow down. You got to be more focused in what you're doing from that offensive standpoint. You got to be uber focused pre-snap. Get yourself in good position. Stay in front of the chains and stay on the field. You got to keep. You got to keep them at bay, and you got to keep them frustrated. And that's something that John Mateer and group can do if they can get that ground game going.
Got some comments rolling in. Gig 'em Bart. Sooners get it done. Book it. All right. Little A&M Aggie love for OU. Josh Manning, my boy in here, says, I agree. My good friend Dave is going to blow a load this weekend after OU wins. Hey, Josh, I hope you're right. Yeah, more than likely, if that comes to fruition, yeah, that's probably going to happen. But, Coach, you watched the OU-Tennessee game. The OU offense in the first half was anemic. I mean, pathetic. I didn't like any aspect of the game plan. Did not seem like they tried to commit to the run against a defense that had struggled to stop it. Tennessee defensively is not good. Alabama is going to be a much better opponent on that side of the football. The second half, Oklahoma elevated their game. I thought the key to that was what you just said. They got the run game going, took some pressure off Mateer. What did you see in that game that kind of flipped the script to get that offense some rhythm?
What I see is very similar to what Gunnar Stockton had to deal with at the beginning of the year. I think Mateer's finally beginning. I don't know if it just a switch that flipped and midway through that game. When I watched the first half of that game, Dave, he's so busy with his feet. He's so ready off that first snap read. If it's not there, I think he panics too quickly. What I noticed in the second half as the run game started to develop, now all of a sudden that helped him on play action. It helped him on RPO kind of stuff to where he was able to sit in the pocket and he looked more poised. He looked more like he wanted to stay in a spot, and he was delivering the football because he was more consistent. I noticed that it's almost a technique, believe it or not, in the first quarter and the second quarter, when you've got that window of time in your head, which most people would say 4 seconds, but realistically, the SEC defense is high caliber. You're probably thinking 3 seconds. That's why pre-snap recognition is so important. That I noticed he was very busy with his feet. Obviously a very gifted athlete. He's got high twitch. I love what he does with the football when he's in space, but he needs to settle down. If he wants to be able to deliver those throws, he's got to connect on those completion percentages and get them up by being more sound in the pocket. And that's something that comes with trust of your offensive line. But you know where that came from to me in the second half is because the ground game began to get established, and I saw him settle down. He didn't look as like, it's almost like, you think about someone's just flashing, it's just like a twitch almost that he's got, and he just wouldn't settle down, take that deep breath, sit in the pocket, get his feet sound, good fundamental technique, and deliver the football. So that to me is what caused the whole change to me, because I was questioning that too. I had it here in my notes, man. 7 runs basically in the first half, ran 2 gap schemes, 4 duos, 3 zones, and 2 of them were +1 reads where the quarterback has the ability to pull the football as well. I think, Mateer, obviously we know what he can do with the football, but the less that we have to count, Oklahoma has to count on him to necessarily be the primary ball carrier and have your guys behind you running the football, gaining those 4 and 5 yards and being able to hit that bounces, because that's the beauty of duo, is it allows the running back to bounce off tackle to get outside, which could be something exploited against Bama. And then all of a sudden you start seeing the RPO game, the play action game set up. And all of a sudden now John is back there with the ability. I've always thought to myself, the chemistry between your OC and your quarterback, like Arbuckle is with Mateer, is that you give him in high percentage situations like rollout where you've got 2 receiver game, and if it's not there, you're able to run with the football. Get yourself out the tackle box where you have the ability to be an athlete, move in space, and then again, the things that keep you in the box come from that running game, establishing the RPO game where you've got those quick throws, those high percentage throws, those slants, those stops, where you're getting the ball out quick and you're making Alabama react. That keeps you in front of the chains. It keeps things moving down the field, hopefully keeps the time of possession in your favor, and the better you can do that, the less time you're seeing Alabama's offense on the field. So to answer your question, I really think it comes down to the fact that y'all established a better running game in the second half.
My final question really it involves Oklahoma's offensive line. And just for the people out there, I think we all have seen how good Fasusi can be, how good EPL can be, and how good Foje can be. That was the first game they all 3 played together, really, and it's a unit against Tennessee. What did you see out of those young guys that, not only for this weekend, but in the long haul for the rest of the season, that you think should give Oklahoma fans confidence in this offensive line?
Well, the first thing I always do when I watch film, Randy, is I always look at the front 5. I'm always looking at the chemistry, what I call the triad, which is the center, both guards, because they're working so much in when they have to identify the mic. Because typically your guard center to the play call side is always got to be working together with your tackle on an island. The back 2 have got an island they're working with as well. So the pre-snap communication, first thing I saw, I thought was really good. I really like the amount of when they're running, y'all run a lot of slide protection and you run boot protection where you'll have a slide right, a guard will pull, there'll be play action and he'll pull off of that. I really like the fact that just the way they move transitionally, because, believe it or not, it is really tough as an offensive line coach watching 5 guys in sync do their job, because all it takes is one guy to do something wrong and it completely destroys what you're looking at when you got 4 guys doing it technically right. So to be uniform is something that's important too. So what I watch them from a run first, and then I break down the way that they go through their pass pro, how they do their play action, their RPO game, things like that. I think they move really well. Like I said, Tennessee's defensive line, not necessarily going to be the same thing that you're going to be seeing from Alabama's defensive line. Tim Keenan is a guy that they got back at that zero tech. He's a really good defensive lineman for them. He changed the whole dynamics of the game playing Georgia in week 4. He came back from his injury. But from what I see from that offensive line standpoint is consistency. And that's something I really would love to see that improve, because when I watched you guys against Texas, I remember talking to Dave and I was just like, my God, it looked very unharmonious. I mean, there was not a lot of sync with that. And that's what I was telling him as what I watched against Tennessee. Big difference in that game, especially as it went on. So I think that's what you want to see. You want to start getting better as the year goes on, and then every time you have some improvement. So if you've got guard tackle pulling for counter tray, you get better at those kind of concepts. If you've got to make sure that you've got a 5-0 call and the guards in the center are working middle, tackles are on islands with the outside 5s, you communicate that very well, and you see that consistency from that. So I think it's a great thing. And from what I saw from Tennessee, because like I said, I gauged you guys from about Texas to Tennessee, I really saw a lot of improvement there and a lot more consistency. And that's what you want to see out of your offensive line production.
Yeah, there's been a lot of people, OU fans, kind of clamoring to get this combination of offensive linemen up there with EPL, Fasusi, and Foje. And lo and behold, it's been the best group they've had all season. Coach, my last one for you, and we'll get you out of here. The Oklahoma defense against this Alabama offense on paper and going in, a lot of people would look at this and say, look, Alabama's one dimensional. They can't run the ball. They really don't make an effort to. That should feed into what Oklahoma likes to do. But I don't see it that way. I think the secondary for OU at times has been the weak link of the defense, which is still very strong. But I mean, this Alabama offense, even though they can't run it, is still very potent with the weapons they have on the outside.
I agree with you. And, that's something that I said at the original beginning of the storyline is that the front four have to get home. And that's something that Georgia couldn't do. And I worried about that when we played them because of the fact that if Ty Simpson has a chance to stay on his spot for a 3 to 4 second count and deliver the football, it's going to be a long night for anybody because I think he delivers the ball in the mailbox. He spins the ball very well, highly cerebral, very good at getting people in the right place. But what I think is different from the DC standpoint and from your defensive standpoint is that I think you're going to get home with 4 and 5. I don't think Ty Simpson's going to have the time to sit back there in the pocket like he did against Georgia. I think you get him off his spot, you get him out of rhythm, and now all of a sudden that helps your secondary out as well. I think there's always sort of this uniform concept that if you're not getting home to the quarterback with your front four, even with front five, that makes defensive secondary help even harder because you're having to cover for longer windows. And all of a sudden you're saying, why can't we cover these guys? Well, you got hella athletes running around out there, and you've got 4 seconds of time trying to cover these kids because nobody can get home to the quarterback. I think that's the biggest difference you're going to see from Oklahoma's standpoint is that I think they're going to get home with 4 and 5 man pressure. They're going to take him off his spots, and I think that's going to end up being something successful for you guys so that all of a sudden your playbook gets a lot larger on the defensive side of the ball. You can start bringing more exotic blitzes and things like that, and that helps your secondary out. I don't think there's a secondary in the SEC that could cover those wide receivers as long as they need to if you're not getting pressure to Ty Simpson. So to me, that's the lock and key I'm talking about because I really do think that Brent Venables has a very good recipe of getting to the quarterback. If he can't dial it up with 4-man pressure, he'll bring 5 and 6. But, if you got to get home with that when you bring 5 and 6 because now you're locked down in cover 1 or cover 0 with that.
Yeah, Coach, I said that was the last one. We still got you for 3 more minutes. I'd be remiss if I didn't bring this up. You have a big one, too, this weekend with the Texas Longhorns. Georgia has owned Texas. Look, since we made the switch, OU and Texas, you guys have been a thorn in their ass. How do you kind of view that matchup? Are you confident? Are you worried? How you feeling?
Well, the one thing that you got to hear me say out loud is I'm glad they're coming to Sanford Stadium. I'm glad we're going to be able to see them in Athens. Um, I think there is these up and down roller coaster rides we take. I think you look at the preseason, what Texas has was on paper before they started playing ball games, and we know what they've become. But I think they've become relevant just in time. I don't really know the relevancy of beating a Vandy team at home is really what's all of a sudden got them buzzing again. But what I noticed from Georgia's standpoint, from a coach's standpoint, I've watched Georgia get so much better. And just like we were talking about with your offensive line, our offensive line is the healthiest it has been. They are the most consistent that they have been, and they were our weak link in week 1s through week 4 or 5. The only thing that I really feel like we're still struggling with is in the defensive secondary, which worries me at times. But, the one thing that Coach Smart fits is just like Brent Venables with Bama and DeBoer. I think for some odd reason, Kirby Smart and Bobo and Schumann, I think they really fit lock and key to Texas very well. It showed last year and what we did with them in Austin as well as in the SEC championship game, and that was with an injury to our quarterback and having to bring somebody in dry to come in and take over, and what a job he did. So, it's going to be a great matchup. It's a night game. I really like where it's gone considering where it could have been at the beginning of the year because Texas was playing some very horrific football, honestly, to tell you the truth. And to see them, become relevant pretty well here, I really hope that it allows us to go in and get a good barometer of where we're at right now. But I just feel really good because of what Bobo is doing with Stockton. very similar to what I was talking about with Arbuckle and Mateer. I think they have found a very good chemistry between those two. They really know what works between them, and they're becoming highly effective with a very consistent line and a running back room that's doing a phenomenal job and complementing the passing game very well. If defensively we can continue to play consistently, we can get to Arch Manning, just like I'm telling you guys to get to Ty Simpson. That helps our defensive backfield out, and I really do think that gives us a lot of success for Saturday night. So I think it's going to be a great matchup. I think there's going to be a back and forth probably to start with. We haven't seemed to be, we've had slow starts all year long, but it would really be nice to see them put 4 quarters together against this Texas Longhorn team on Saturday.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Both teams, Oklahoma and Texas, have huge matchups with, hey, look, call it like it is, national championship implications. Georgia standing in the way of the Longhorns. Once again, can't wait to watch that one. Can't wait to watch OU Alabama. Coach Chris Hayes, want to thank you for joining us this evening. You've been, as advertised, awesome. We appreciate it.
Hey, I appreciate you guys having me on. I'm going to go ahead and say this right before you get off is I'd love to see, because for some odd reason we don't have the recipe to beat Bama. It seems it would be nice to see OU take them down on Saturday. I think it's a big key matchup for you guys with what y'all got left, and considering y'all's wins against Michigan and Tennessee, top 25 teams, this is a great opportunity for you guys to buckle someone else and have another key matchup win on your resume. So good luck to you guys this weekend as well.
All right, Coach, we appreciate that, and we'll chat throughout the weekend and see how things are going, man. You have a good night.
Hey, you and Randy, y'all take care. Have a good evening.
Thanks, Chris.
Will do. That's Coach Chris Hayes. Randy, I thought apropos comments, man. I mean, look, Oklahoma right now, it feels weird to say this because after Ole Miss, people thought they were dead in the water, but they have everything on the table still. If they're able to go win this game at Alabama, you come home against 2 very winnable teams with Ole Miss or with Missouri and LSU, both in Norman. You like their chance, but this is a tough obstacle in Tuscaloosa.
It really is. But if you remember 3 weeks ago after the Ole Miss loss, I even said, hey, look, they're winning 8 games. I mean, I thought with the last 2 home games out on their schedule, there was really no doubt with what they could do there. And I think it was the question mark, what can they do on the road at Tennessee? What can they do on the road at Alabama? And I kind of like what Chris said, because I think I've been saying on the franchise for a week and a half now when I've gone on for my little segments or fill in. Yes, Simpson's better than Aguilar, but it's not that much better. And they are the same type of quarterback, as you heard Chris say. They are the type of quarterback that plays into Venable's system. Yeah, can they tuck the ball and move around in the pocket? Yes. But they're not going to do what Chambliss does, and that's what gives a Venable's defense the biggest problem. So does that mean they're going to win? No. But does that give them a better shot? 100%.
Yeah, no, he's not Trinidad Chambliss. He's got a knack of evading people in the pocket and extending time. He's kind of a Houdini there, but he's not going to tuck it and go for 30 like Chambliss did and break your back. And that's a key element you don't have to defend. And I like Brent Venables' defense in that case. If you tell anybody that Brent Venables has a defense with the personnel he wants to run it, how he wants to run it, that you've got to go beat a one-dimensional offense, I don't care what side of the ball they're good at. I like the odds of that Brent Venables defense shutting it down. I know Ty Simpson is good. They've got weapons on the outside, Randy, but look, calling it like it is, this matchup favors Oklahoma defensively.
No doubt. And you mentioned one-dimensional, and I know Chris does a lot of video work, and he's a coach, and I take his word on all this. But Bama has no running game.
No.
I mean, Jan Miller being back, it hasn't really mattered. I mean, what's funny is I think Chris is right in one thing. If you watch the Georgia game, the one game they got some running going with Jan Miller was that game. But outside of that, Bama has struggled. And so that's, again, why I'm like, as long as Oklahoma can take care of the ball and establish drives, and it's the same thing I said against the Tennessee Volunteers. It's not about scoring. I mean, yes, you got to score eventually, but it's more about maintaining ball control. And if they can do that hey, Oklahoma's going to have a chance in the end of the game. If they turn the ball over and can't control the clock yeah, they're not going to have a chance. But this type of offense that Alabama has plays to Oklahoma's favor. That's the good news. Bad news, what is Oklahoma's strength? Defensive line. We knew R. Mason Thomas was going to be on it. I'm a little curious what's up with Jaden Jackson being on it.
Yeah, that's a head scratcher, Andy. You wonder, maybe, I'm not going to speculate, gamesmanship. You always think about that with a big matchup. That's certainly a newcomer not wanted to see by Oklahoma fans to be on the injury report. But offensively, Oklahoma, they've got to get out of this habit, man. They have to, and that's trying to force the pass. When the run game is working and they're in rhythm, then they try to force it for whatever reason. You get a couple incompletions, it kills the drive, and they've got to punt it. Against Alabama, they have to possess the football. I mean, look, the defense is good. I like the matchup. But Alabama has dudes on offense. They're going to make plays. They're going to move the football. They're going to score some. The more you can keep that away from the field and keep them on the sideline and have your offense possess the ball. Plus, look, they're good at running the ball when they actually do it. It has a chance to carry the football team where Mateer, regardless if he's 100% or not with that thumb, doesn't have to be the hero. Just stick to it. Make a commitment to stick to it.
Well, and I think the one game Chris made the comment when I asked him about it, a lot of people forget, not you, but a lot of people forget, like when he was talking about the offensive line and that chemistry. This is the first stretch where they've had the same five out there. We haven't had to look on the availability report going into the game going, oh God, Derek Simmons is out. You know, who are they going to rotate in? They got better in the Tennessee game because that unit started playing together more and more throughout that entire game, moving on from, the game before with Mississippi, and that unit started playing together. And you saw it get better. And so I kind of expect to see even more improvement this week. And I think the best news for Oklahoma, you're going to have to throw the ball, but you're going to have to run it. I call Bernard, even though he's a high-level player, right? I think really, to be honest, he might be their best receiver.
Yep.
Talent-wise, no. But with what he does for Alabama, he's their best receiver. And I called him earlier this week Simpson's version of a tight end safety blanket, even though he does the bigger plays.
Yeah.
John Mateer is it looks like John Mateer is getting his safety blanket back in Keontae Lewis. I mean, think about this. In that passing game where it's really struggled, it's been the last 2 weeks, right? Lewis has been out. And so you kind of like, if he can come back and be what he was before he missed the last couple of weeks, you kind of like what that will do just to help, yes, use the passing game in a running game sense at times when they want to at least throw the ball around. They'll have Lewis out there for his safety blanket.
And look, he was that before he got hurt, man. You could tell John Mateer, it seemed like, had the most trust in that guy. I know it's looked like Satania, especially on third down. People forget before Lewis ran into a brick wall, figuratively speaking, he was the guy for John Mateer on third down or whenever he got in trouble. So getting him back on the field would not only help John Mateer, Andy, but the other wide receivers for Oklahoma, like Satania and Deion Burks, having that weapon on the field as well.
And you know what I really like about it, because I feel like a guy that's filled that role for Lewis over the last couple of weeks has been Javion Gibson.
Yeah.
But we heard about his big play capability, right?
Yeah.
I like the fact Lewis getting back. Do we get to see a little bit of that big play ability out of Gibson because he's not having to be that big guy on the outside, for that 8-yard catch or anything like that. So maybe that's a positive just to see what can Giovanni Gibson actually do in that big play area. Do we get to see some of that unveiled this weekend?
I hope so, because we've heard about it long enough, right? I mean, the dude is 6'2", 220 pounds, does a standing backflip. I want to see that utilized in the pass game down the field, maybe with this offensive line finally put together and getting some rhythm. That I think Coach also touched on this too. It's a trust thing with a quarterback, right? When you drop back to pass, you have to trust your offensive line is going to block it up. I don't think Mateer has had that trust for a big portion of the season. It looked like in the second half he started to feel that they've got it and actually stepped up in the pocket opposed to bailing. If that continues, I know Alabama's defense is good, but I expect the Oklahoma offense to move the football. They're not infallible. This isn't the Alabama defense under Nick Saban. So just have a good balanced attack. Giovanni Gibson, Keontae Lewis on the field won't hurt.
Yeah, no doubt. And this Alabama defense, it is good, but it's closer to the Tennessee defense than it is what Alabama defense has been in the past. I mean, I think we all look, and I'll say the same thing because I know Josh is on there as well, Manning. For Texas fans, that's at least the positive thing for them. Alabama and Georgia are neither one the old school defenses that we've seen in years past. They're closer to being those mid defenses, that do some good things here and there and come up with a big play. I think that's the key for Oklahoma in this matchup, avoiding the big defensive play for Alabama. Don't give them that turnover. Don't do something stupid and hold on to the ball too long where you're maybe in a second and short situation, and then Mateer holds the ball too long in the pocket. Next thing you know, it's 3rd and 15 because you
Right.
took a sack you didn't need to. I mean, you've got to avoid those big plays defensively. Otherwise, this defense can be human for Alabama. There's talent there, but it hasn't lived up to being the high-level defense. I mean, we've joked about it all year long. Oklahoma and Texas in year 2 have come in and shown the SEC how to play defense, and I know that's a stretch. I mean, they've all played
Well,
defense, but
they're the best
they've
defenses
been
this year.
exactly. And so that's kind of the thing. You just can't help them out. I think that's what Oklahoma's got to watch this week on offense. Do your things. If it's not there, don't help out Alabama.
On that note, Matt Burton and I today on the franchise talked about the Tennessee game. You went into Neyland Stadium, one of the toughest places to play in college football, on a night that would be hard to win for anybody. You didn't play your best. You turned the football over 2 times. You had 11 penalties for over 100 yards, and yet you still won. And that, to me, is telling of a team that's got heart and at least the stick-to-itness this year on top of the talent they have. So you're exactly right. You go into Alabama and you don't do those things I just talked about, you've got a great chance to beat the Tide. And then, like I say, everything is out in front of this team with 2 winnable games left.
4-1 out of buys from Oklahoma.
Is that right? 4-1.
Yeah, 4-1.
The one loss would be Texas this year.
Yeah.
So they've
excuse.
They've just played crappy football and all the rest, but won. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
So,
and they
won. Well, and think about it. The games that have been big coming off the bye, they haven't played crappy. But I mean, like Central Florida wasn't a big game. It was a big game they needed to win. But they came out and sleptwalked through that. It's like, so it'll be interesting to see coming out of this, because last time they had a big time opponent that I can think of out of the bye was Alabama last year.
I thought K-State in 23 after Oklahoma beat Nebraska and Lincoln and Norman was after a bye when Adrian Martinez ran all over them.
I think those are back to back weeks.
Okay.
Yeah, I think those are back to back. Yeah, I mean I got that stat, and then another guy that does research and tweets all the time, he put it out last week as well. So I'm pretty sure that record is correct.
Then I feel better about that, because I remember the UCF game. I remember Texas this year. Not good, but we'll see what happens coming up in Tuscaloosa. Randy, wanted to talk about Texas and Georgia. You just kind of brought it up. No, this is not the old Georgia Bulldog defense. That's good, because Texas offense isn't, probably what we thought it would be. It's not good enough to just hold up on its own, but that defense is probably the second best in the SEC behind Oklahoma. I think Texas wins the football game. I just do. I know it's in Athens. I like that Texas got over the hump of a couple of games they probably should have lost. Kentucky or not Vandy. Mississippi State had them beat. Vandy came back on in the end, but I thought once they got past that, watch out for Texas. I think they go beat Georgia.
I'm not sure either one of these teams go on the road and win this weekend. And part of the reason I like Georgia is kind of the same reason that I think Oklahoma's got maybe a better puncher's chance than Texas does on the road. Simpson's not a running quarterback. Gunnar Stockton, if they get too aggressive, watching Georgia, even though their offense has been good, their offense is Gunnar Stockton, and it's making the defensive play, kind of like what we saw Trinidad Chambliss do against Oklahoma. And so that's where I think we're going to have to watch and see what do they have schemed up to go against him right there. Because if they can control Gunnar Stockton and really make him more of a pocket quarterback, I 100% agree. Texas wins this game.
Yeah.
If they let Gunnar Stockton get out, use his legs, they are dangerous offensively. And I never thought I'd say this about a Georgia offense, because I've always thought they've just been kind of mid offensively. They are a scary offense. The thing is, for Georgia fans, it's got to drive them nuts. They're a scary offense, I think, this year, but their defense isn't scary. So can they take advantage of that defense? That's what we got to wait and see. Yeah, they put up big numbers against Vanderbilt, but 190 yards of that passing was passes caught behind the line of scrimmage and bad tackling by Vandy. That's not taking anything away from the win, but is Georgia going to do that same thing defensively, give them those long plays by missed tackles? It's the same question we have for Oklahoma going up against Bama's defense.
Kind of funny to switch, right? Alabama, Georgia, with really good prolific offenses and defense is kind of where they're lacking. You had Oklahoma and Texas. Yeah, they got the defense. Now their offense leaves something to be desired.
Man.
It's weird, dude. Here's where I would be optimistic if I'm an OU fan. I like the upside of the OU offense this year with John Mateer more than I do Texas.
I kind of agree because I think we've seen has Texas flashed, yeah, but I think we've seen like against Michigan,
Right.
John Mateer played really well. And if you want a positive for an Oklahoma fan, I thought you saw closer to that John Mateer in the second half against Tennessee than maybe we have seen since the Michigan game.
Yep.
So I think those are things you can feel good about. But also on the other side, if you're a Texas fan, the one thing, even though I said 190 yards were from behind the line of scrimmage, in the passing game, it was still the fact Arch made those plays and the receivers made the plays. So I mean, those again are positives. But I feel like both these teams, especially on the offense, when we talk Oklahoma and Texas, you want to buy into it, but you kind of also want to see 2 weeks of it in a row. It's kind of like, all right, guys, both of you have had a bye week. Can you capitalize? And as much as I say, Aaron said Venables is 4-1 after bye weeks, and you kind of like that matchup. As good as the bye week was, because it gives you another week to get Kobe healthy, Mason Thomas healthy. Sometimes going on and playing and just kind of riding that momentum is a good thing. So you kind of wonder for both these teams, was a bye week in some ways a bad thing?
Yeah, I know. I mean, if you're coming off the Tennessee win, if you're Oklahoma, you got all the momentum in the world, you're riding high, and all of a sudden you got to sit there for a week and watch everybody else play in college football. Now you got to try to get that back up to go on the road and win at Alabama. So, I get your point. Maybe that's why they've struggled a little bit after bye weeks. I don't know. I'm very curious to see what John Mateer looks like, Randy. This to me is a prove-it game, right? Prove you're the guy they went out and got. Yes, I know the injury, but I go back to Texas. He's not going to play if he's not ready to play. I mean, this team takes that stuff serious. I think he's okay. Go prove you're the guy that was worth all the talk, hey, he's the best in the portal. This is why they went and got him, man, to go win games like this. Here you go. Here's your chance. You got your offensive line. You got your wide receivers. You got a pretty good run game now. Now just play better than you have the last few weeks.
Exactly. I will still say I don't think he's 100% yet. Did you see the handshake before the Tennessee game?
Yeah, what idiot fan reached out and grabbed his hand? Yeah, that's real smart.
Regardless, when you flinch like that, that tells you right there. The guy's not, or he wasn't. Who knows? He's had another 2 weeks. I think that's kind of where I think you're right on the upside for this offense. As an OU fan, you got to have belief, and that's why I feel like this game is huge. If you can win this one, you just feel like the momentum can continue. And I'll say this: it's kind of funny. I've seen scenarios where Oklahoma and Texas could meet in the SEC title game. I've preached this for 3 weeks now, not only on this podcast, but also on the franchise. If you're an Oklahoma or you're a Texas fan, you don't want any part of the SEC title game.
Hell no, not nowadays.
And, no, I mean, because if you've already got the 2 losses, right?
Yes.
As bunched up as it's getting, you lose a game there.
You have nothing to gain. You have everything to lose.
You're losing. The team's going to the SEC title game unless it's an undefeated Alabama and a 1-loss Georgia.
Yep.
You're playing with fire. I mean, you're sitting there going, hey, no, let's just go 10-2, and we'll sit home and watch the SEC title game and move right on into the college football playoff.
If you know you're in the playoff and you don't have to go earn it, no, you don't want any part of that. All you can do is lose your spot. That's it. Yeah. If you're already in, you have nothing to gain.
It's just like Narduzzi this week for Pitt. Did you hear his quotes yesterday?
No.
Right? Okay, they're playing Notre Dame this week. That's a non-conference game, but it's the ACC scheduling, right?
Yeah.
And I admit the way he worded it was kind of bad, but SportsCenter was kind of making fun of him because he came out and said, because they've got 2 losses already, right? He goes, I don't care if we lose 106-0. Talking about Notre Dame this week.
Yeah.
He's like, because in the end, he's like, for them, it's opposite of like what Oklahoma and Texas are on the line. They're not going to make an at-large bid even if they go beat Notre Dame this week. Their way to get in is getting to the ACC title game and winning. For Oklahoma and Texas, you care about winning these 3 games, and then you don't give 2 shits about making the title game because that could screw everything you've done in the month of November.
Yeah.
If you make the SEC title game. So I actually appreciated, and it was kind of a coach being honest with Narduzzi this week going, guys, we got to win the ACC title. If we want to make the playoff,
he was basically saying he doesn't care what happens against Notre Dame.
And I'm sure, they want to win. I'm 100% sure of that. But he probably could have worded it different. But he was basically saying, guys, it doesn't matter if we win or lose this game. We still only have 1 loss in the ACC. We can make that title game. We just got to win everything else out on our schedule after Notre Dame.
Well,
And
he's
that
not
was
wrong.
almost like, no. And I was like, I appreciate it. It was like, here's a coach being truthful with fans and media alike, going, yeah, this game matters, but it doesn't matter for what we want to do as a program.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
get
it's
it, and
great.
he's right. I mean, for Oklahoma and Texas, yeah, if they win the next 3 games, you don't want any part of the SEC championship because all that can do at that point is knock you out of your goal. Period. You got nothing to gain. Maybe move up in the standings at that point, but look, they're all going to be tough at that point. It's not worth taking the risk. Now, look, let's back up a second. Every team wants to win their conference championship, right? That's always a goal. It's always good to have in the trophy room. So, I mean, part of me sees that, yeah, you want to make it, you want to win it. But, man, if it knocks you out of the playoffs, to me, it's still just that's a tough one. That's not worth it.
No doubt. And I will say, is there an argument like if Oklahoma or Texas or both of them went out the rest of the year and somehow meet in the title game? Maybe they've moved up the rankings so far by that point in time.
Better.
They're fine regardless if they end up having 3 losses. But is that the type of fire? Because look, and we're new to the SEC here in Texas and Oklahoma, right? And all those crazy SEC fans will tell you in baseball and basketball, it's harder to win the SEC than it is a national title. Fine, it may be. But when you get down to it in your trophy case as a school, as a program, do you want a little SEC trophy and look at your friends and go, hey, it was harder to win that? Or do you want that little gold, oblong, weird national championship trophy going, it may not have been as hard, but guess what? That's the one the rest of the nation recognizes. That's the one you want.
That is the one you want, and you want to play it smart to get there. And you might be right. I mean, look, if they beat Alabama, that's going to be a pretty impressive resume, Randy. That strength of schedule that we talked about all preseason doesn't look as tough with LSU falling off a bit. Missouri, a lot of injuries, not what they've been, but still, that's going to be quite a few wins. Their losses look really good. The two teams in the top 12 in America right now in the playoffs. So it might get to that point if they win that game. They could afford a third loss. Just 3 conference losses to me, that's a lot for the committee to overlook at that point.
When I'm saying 3 losses, that's if they won out, like all the way and played in the title game. They may have moved up. They may have won up enough. Like if you went out the rest of the way until the SEC title game,
right?
And get there, maybe you've moved up to where you're number 6 in the country, and fine, you lose that game to at that point in time a number 3 Georgia. You might have secured yourself. No, losing to Alabama,
done.
You're gonna, and I'll say the same thing for Texas. Losing to Georgia, both of them.
Yeah.
You're going to need a lot of help if you think you're still going to make the playoffs because there's several teams behind you and there's several teams in front of you. So you're going to need a lot of help. Now, I do think the SEC as a conference in whole got a lot of help this week or the last 2 weeks. The ACC shitting the bed.
Yes.
I think they're a 1-bid league now. I know Miami's moving up there, but I just don't know if they're going to make it. Now, if Pitt could go do the country a favor and beat Notre Dame, then all of a sudden that opens up another spot because Notre Dame cannot afford a loss.
I was okay with everything the committee's done until they put Notre Dame where they have the last 2 weeks. I don't understand that outside of just being Notre Dame and the fact they made it last year. But yes, if Pittsburgh can just take care of that forever for the rest of the season, extremely grateful. But yeah, I agree with that. If Oklahoma wins the next 3 games, they're going to be in the playoffs. They're going to be pretty highly ranked. That would mean that they have wins over number 5 Alabama, and then take care of your two home games that don't look as tough, but still they'll be respected by the committee members enough to put them right where they want to be, man. So it's going to be a hell of a weekend. In the end, though, I hate to do it, but I got to take the Alabama Crimson Tide to win the game in a close one. I think Oklahoma goes in the fourth quarter. Nip and tuck. It's a great game. It's a really good one to watch, but something happens, some kind of catastrophic turnover, maybe a sack like you talked about, holding the ball too long, something to knock Oklahoma off.
Yeah, I thought about Alabama winning this one in a close one as well. It just feels like a road game, even though it's kind of weird, Dave. Oklahoma's had Alabama's number over the years.
And they're undefeated on the road this year, by the way, Oklahoma.
It's interesting. I still think Alabama wins a close one. But it's not going to shock me if they pull off the upset if Oklahoma does. I mean, there's a reason why it's down to 5.5 in Vegas.
And 3 of that's because Bama's at home, by the way.
Exactly. I mean, I think everyone else that's the betting public, and I don't mean just the crazy fan betting public, but the knowledge money, sees the same thing we see in Alabama. Like, hey, they're a really good team, but this is not Nick Saban's Alabama, you know?
Right.
And so I think everyone knows there's a chance. There's a puncher's chance in this game. And I think if you're an Oklahoma fan, that's all you can ask for in this game at this stage of the season. And I will say this as well. If they lose this game, I don't want to hear any OU fans calling for jobs or anything like that because, for God's sakes, they're 7-3. Odds are they're going to finish 9-3. And I think that, Dave, is that not where we both kind of thought they could be? Maybe a chance at 10-2.
That's what
And
we thought.
that's right where they're going to be. And everyone would have accepted that in August. That's a stepping stone. And you see the positive momentum. I don't know if you saw it today because I know you were driving back from the franchise. They just flipped a second Penn State recruit tonight.
Okay, that was the Hayes Fawcett tweet from earlier. Okay.
The running back that was committed to Penn State, they just flipped him to Oklahoma for the 26 class.
There's some really positive momentum right now, Randy, and win or lose against Alabama. Look, I'm with you. I think this thing has shown Brent Venables a ton of scrutiny in his time in Norman, but I think it's showing this year he's got it heading the right direction. You know, defense is there. A little bit more work on the offense, but, you know, that offensive line for next year looks pretty freaking good. The running backs, I don't want to say it because we've said it for 2 years in a row. They look good, but we'll see what happens there. And John Mateer, who knows, man? He's not having the statistical year that we thought. Probably he thought. Does he come back next year? I don't know. We'll see.
I think the only way John Mateer doesn't come back, and this is not a slam to him, the only way he doesn't come back is if on the last 3 weeks, starting this Saturday,
tears it up.
He plays like the Heisman front runner that was in the first 3 weeks. You know, if he plays that way, I think then he's got a financial decision to make because I'm one that said this ever since the start, and I know Baker and Kyler ended up going number one. I don't think John Mateer's ever a high first round pick. I think the best he can probably do is going in that 30 to 32 slot at the end of the first round, but I think he's more of a second round guy. And if he gets a draft grade, if he plays out of his mind the next 3 weeks and in the bowl game or playoff, you know, and he gets a grade of a second rounder, if I was John Mateer, I'd probably go, especially after breaking my hand this year, because do you want to risk another injury? You know, I think those would be the only things you have to watch Mateer's year. If he just plays good and they win games the rest of the way, he's coming back next year. I'd be shocked if he doesn't.
And that coming off a 9, maybe 10-win season, and that's assuming they lose Alabama, would be a lot of hype coming into next year with that defense coming back, offensive line, material. That's kind of stuff that you want to start seeing coming off a losing season last year. The exact opposite would be heading into this offseason. And that's what Brent's needed. That's what the fan base needed to see. And to his credit, he has turned this around enough. And that Tennessee win, Randy, looking back on it, you know, in time, I think that's going to end up being a very important win in OU football history because after the Ole Miss loss, it did not feel good for the program where it was at and Brent Venables as a whole. Them going on the road beating Tennessee was gigantic.
It really was, and I think it shows. We talk about the growth of the program. It shows a lot in Brent Venables and this staff and what they've learned over the last 3-4 years, you know, because you talk about wins. The Tennessee's win big for a lot of reasons, not only for, to your point, what it meant and when it was, you know, how the program was looking, but also they've got 2 top 25 wins. I mean, we can go back to year 2 when they won 10 games. I think they may have 1 top 25 win.
Texas.
You know, and the rest of them were kind of, okay, they won 10 games. They did what they should have done, you know, but they weren't great wins. This is kind of that year you can look at and go, all right, this program is building. They've got some really good wins. And if they go get the Alabama win, and I don't care if they only win the next 3 and lose in the first round of the playoffs, that is a momentum builder because that is 3 top 25 wins in a year where you also go to the college football playoff. That's huge for this program.
And I'll tell you what, Randy, if Oklahoma plays smart and not sloppy in Tuscaloosa and they take care of the football, they have every chance to head up, go beat the Crimson Tide. They're not going to be intimidated walking into that place after bitch slapping Alabama last year and the environments they've already played in. So if they just play smart, they've got every chance to go win it, Randy. But I'm going to get on the road. Go ahead.
Just real fast, and say I think the other thing, and it's a quote that was in the video that you put out after the Tennessee win, that I kind of felt a difference in Brent Venables' maybe attitude going on the road. And I think I mentioned it to you last week. The quote that was in that video when I guess it was the pregame speech when he was like, guys, do you know why we're on primetime TV tonight? Do you know why Tennessee's on primetime TV? It's because we're in town. And, you know, that was kind of one of those things where you're like, I don't know if Brent, unless they just haven't used it in any videos, has been that brash and
Right.
that type of guy. That's the type of thing Bob Stoops would have said. That's the type of thing Barry Switzer would have said. You know, that brashness of like, hey, we're the underdog, but we're the reason they're on primetime TV, not because it's Tennessee. And so that's kind of also that moment. We'll see what happens this weekend. But where I went, maybe Brent, maybe the staff kind of figures out what they are now, you know, and we'll see. It's going to be fun. I love it. One thing you need to mention it because you tweeted it last week. A big difference in this team right now, I think, is Caden Helms as well.
Oh, yeah, man. Caden Helms, tight end. We talked about it in the preseason. He's the one guy in the tight end room that has the capability and the size to do both, right? Be good at run blocking and receiving. I think he's starting to come on there, Randy, and that's such a boon to that room. It's needed. Can't wait to see him keep taking steps. And you're right, Brent Venables, that showed kind of a different attitude. I like it. They're going to need it heading down to Tuscaloosa. We'll be back to wrap it up next week and recap, hopefully, a big Oklahoma win. Randy, anything you want to wrap up with?
That's pretty much it. I mean, I think it's good to see that the Regents approved the stadium improvements for football and for baseball. I mean, we'll get into baseball a lot more later on, but that is huge for this program on the baseball side of things. Good to see them moving in the right direction.
Shows an investment, man. We're here for it. All right. Well, for Randy Heitz, I am traveling Dave Myrick back to the house. This is Red River North on Total Coverage Sports. We'll talk to you guys.